So I recently rewatched every Scream movie, and there's a reason why it's actually my favorite horror movie franchise. From stellar performances and characters down to the meta commentary causing the franchise to step outside the box and familiarizing us with the rules to survive a horror movie. While I do believe every entry has its own merits, they aren't all 10 out of 10s. So today I decided to rank every movie in the Scream franchise in an ultimate battle to determine which one is the best and which is the worst. Let's get into it. Welcome back, I'm Sippin Ice, and obviously spoiler warning for every Scream movie. But more importantly, we all have different opinions and we all like and dislike different things. So with that being said, be sure to drop your ranking down in the comments. Start a conversation. It's time. It's time to talk about
Can you see me?
What do you want?
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
The movie opens up to a high school student preparing for a movie night alone at home. Casey Becker has placed a stovetop popcorn maker onto the open flames, but she receives a call. Casey assumes it's someone calling the wrong number, but she couldn't be more wrong. The tone quickly changes from a calm conversation to demands and heinous threats. She tries to hang up the phone, but they won't allow it. So Casey says her boyfriend will take down the killer, but the killer was prepared for this. One really cool thing that happens during this is that while Casey claims her boyfriend Steve will fight them, we see off in the distance him tied up to a chair on the back patio. Ghostface uses him to play a game, but he tricks her with the age-old question, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? So, Steve is out and gets gutted. Next up is Casey's question, and it's, what door am I at? Ghostface then enters her home, and she uses this opportunity to go outside and into the backyard. As she sneaks around, she notices her parents' car arriving home. But Ghostface also notices Casey's location. It's a race to the finish line, and Ghostface wins. He takes her down with a stab and crushing her throat. So when she attempts to call out to her parents, she is unable to reach them. She is finished off and is left swinging on the family swing. As her parents discover her, the scene ends. This has to easily be the best opening in the franchise, and possibly top 3 openings ever. To take a famous actress like Drew Barrymore was, and then off them in the first 10 minutes during the opening scene was a bold choice that paid off and will become a staple for the franchise. We then are introduced to our final girl, Sydney Mother Truckin' Prescott, and her boyfriend Billy Loomis. Surely this relationship won't end badly. They haven't been intimate before due to Sid losing her mom a year prior, and yes, that's a major plot point. I'm not just saying it just to say it. The next day at school, tons of reporters and police are littering the halls. They are there questioning every student, including Sydney, in the principal's office. During this, and right after, is when we meet the rest of the friend group. First up, my Dewdrop as Deputy Dewey. Tatum Riley, younger sister to the Dewdrop and best friend of Sydney. Next, Randy Meeks, our favorite horror film expert. And lastly, the man that needs no introduction, Stu, Big Money Mocker. Stu and Randy have some of the best scenes and lines together in my opinion. Them going back and forth at the fountain at each other will forever be in my mind. During the night, Sydney is awoken from her nap on the couch by Tatum, informing her she's going to pick up some movies. But afterwards, she receives another call. It's the same voice Casey heard over the phone. They said they are on the porch, but when she steps out to check, nothing. Sydney comes up with a plan. Since they claim to be looking at her, she sticks a finger in her nose and asks them to say what she's doing. But since they can't, she guesses it was just Randy playing the joke. But after they threaten to off her, she realizes it's not really a prank, or at least not a good one. She runs back inside and locks the door. But wait, they couldn't see Sid. So that must mean they are
Stop.
inside the house.
What do you mean by that?
The killer busts out of the closet and attacks Sydney.
Wow, man. Damn.
But not without her getting a good smack to the killer's face. When she gets up and realizes the door is closed, she is forced to run upstairs, where she is luckily able to lock Ghostface out long enough for her to contact the police. Through her window, in comes Billy. While comforting her, he drops his cell phone, leaving Sydney to believe he could be the killer. With this, the police arrest him and take him and Sydney to the station for questioning. The sheriff talks to Billy and his father in his office. He is trying to tie Billy to being the killer. He wants to hold Billy until they get the phone records back, either proving or disproving his innocence. On their way to Dewey and Tatum's house, they run into Gail, who found them exiting out the back. This movie will have you having mixed feelings for Gail, as she is not the nicest person around. As she tells Sydney she will send her a copy of her book when it comes out. That doesn't sound too bad, but then you realize that the book is about the death of her late mother.
I'll send you a copy.
Oh! That's what I'm talking about! That's what
Sydney.
Sydney mean! That's what
Sydney.
is the GOAT! The GOAT!
Just before bed, the Riley household receives a call. Assuming it might be her dad, Sydney goes to the mysterious caller. It's Ghostface calling, seemingly proving Billy's innocence. His innocence is seemingly further proven the next morning when they go to school, when cell phone records showed his phone never made the call. When they arrive to school, Sydney has to have another heated conversation with Gail Weathers. They talk about the court case that sent Cotton Weary to jail for the murder of Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mother. Gail believing him to be innocent, but Sydney believing otherwise. Kenny, Gail's cameraman, hears her say she could save a man's life if she proves Cotton innocent. He is left upset when she exclaims, "Do you know what that will do to my book sales?" While Tatum and Sydney talk at the lockers, Stu is checking out his forehead in a mirror, where Sydney smacked Ghostface. Such a great little clue that most won't pick up on the first viewing, but on the second or third rewatch, Sydney heads to the calm down in the bathroom after seeing kids running around dressed as Ghostface and a bad conversation with Billy. We get a brief scene with Principal Hembry as he berates the two students dressed as Ghostface and threatens to expel them. Afterwards, we catch back up with Sydney in a very heartbreaking scene. In the bathroom, she hides in a stall as two assholes say some very hurtful words about Sydney and her mom. Shit gets me every time, I won't lie. Like, I know it's a movie, but how can some people be so cruel?
That don't work. There's no way out of this one. You're done.
But it doesn't end there for Sydney. She hears a noise in another stall. We see a shot of Ghostface lowering themselves off the toilet. They bust out, lunging at Sydney as she hits a mean slide and escapes the bathroom. Gail catches up with Dewey and tries to get some information out of him by stroking his ego. It works though, as Bro spits some game back. Dewdrop got that dog in him. Interrupting their conversation is Hembry canceling classes for the foreseeable future and reminding them of the town-wide curfew. As Sydney leaves, she is approached by Tatum and Stu, who are very much excited about this. It leads to Stu setting up a party at his place later that night, with everyone invited. That includes the main man, Ghostface. With all the kids and most of the staff outside of the school, that leaves Hembry pretty much alone. He pretends to be Ghostface, but gets ding-dong ditched, but with knocks, because, well, there's no doorbell. Anyways, Hembry walks into the hall and sees a janitor wearing a fedora and a striped sweater like our favorite dream stalker. And the janitor's name is also Fred, and played by Wes Craven, the legend himself. Later on, we catch up with Stu showing up to the movie store that Randy works at. He invites him to his party, and the scene then dissolves into some of my favorite scenes of the movie. Randy accuses Billy of being the killer in front of Stu. During this, he mentions, "There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill off your girlfriend." And while he says this, you can briefly see a woman staring at him weirded out. It's the little things like this, man. I love the realness in this movie. Here is also where we learn of Randy's crush on Sydney. But Stu shuts that idea down quickly and turns the killer blame towards Sydney's dad, which causes Randy to scream his iconic line that I quote in my everyday life at this point.
Everybody's a suspect!
He turns and claims one more time that it's in fact Billy, but as he does, he runs into Billy. Worst possible timing, brother. Billy and Stu corner him and ask, "Well, what if you're the killer, Randy?" Billy messes with him some more by turning and walking off, leading to Randy saying the funniest damn line of the movie.
Are you telling me that's not a killer?
Just so good. Gotta love Randy, dude. As Dewey is driving Tatum and Sydney to the store for party snacks, we see the effects the curfew is having with people leaving and businesses closing shop early. As they arrive, the song Red Right Hand plays. It later becomes Dewey's theme, as it'll be in future installments. They take notice of the emptiness and joke about the events becoming a movie, which is amazing because Stab is the thing in the Scream universe following this first movie. When asked who they believe will play Sydney, Dewey suggests Meg Ryan, but Sydney says with her luck she would get Tori Spelling. And guess who plays her in Stab? Fucking Tori Spelling. Bro, this is what I love. They really out here making Mona Lisas in this franchise. The girls go to the store while Dewey goes to speak with the sheriff. While the girls are shopping, we see a quick shot of Ghostface watching and following them. And sweet old Dewdrop discusses the case with the sheriff while eating an ice cream cone. It's so unnecessary and I love it. This scene makes the sheriff a red herring, by the way, as he stomps his lit cigarette out with his boots that resemble the killer's. But now, it's party time. So bust out the pizza because it's
Pizza time.
As the teens party, Gale and Kenny arrive. Kenny chills in the van eating Cheetos while Gale accompanies Dewey into the party, only because she wants to set up a hidden camera hoping to capture some crazy Ghostface action, which mind you should be illegal because that's a high school party, Gale. As the teens decide which Jamie Lee Curtis classic they want to watch, Gale interrupts them and changes the mood. Stu walks off while Tatum goes to the garage to get more beers. After she grabs a handful, she finds the door shut and locked. So she uses the garage door to leave, but it shuts before she can get to it. She turns around to see Ghostface has closed it. A classic scene then follows with Tatum asking if she could be the helpless victim. She learns it's the real deal though and tries to escape. Since the door is locked, she is forced to try the doggy door that's built into the garage door. She makes it halfway through before she gets stuck. That's when Ghostface raises the garage door. Since she's stuck, Tatum has to ride it to the top until it ends up snapping her neck, killing her. Back to Sydney, we can see most of the party is now leaving because of the curfew. She wanted to be a part of that group, but with Tatum missing and Billy popping in, she's forced to stay. Billy gives Stu a double eyebrow raise, seemingly to let Stu know that Tatum is no more. As they head upstairs to talk, Randy walks up to Stu, hitting us with another banger line. What's Leatherface doing here? He believes he lost his shot with Sid. While Sydney and Billy have relations, we learn the camera set up by Gale in the living room has a 30-second delay. One quick thing I need to point out though, that I love, is all the movie references. We know Randy is our movie guy, but so is Billy. He has quoted many movies up to this point, like Silence of the Lambs and Exorcist. Soon he will reference Psycho and Carrie. But why? I'm sure you know. Randy pauses Halloween to get up and tell the others the rules, which becomes staples in this franchise and becomes meta for most horror as a whole. The rules, as laid out by Randy, are 1. Never have sex. 2. Never drink or do drugs. 3. Never, ever, under any circumstances say, you will be right back, because you won't be back. But Stu being Stu, he mocks the third rule as he leaves the room for more beers. Meanwhile, Gale and Dewey walk down the long driveway in order to investigate a car parked off into the woods. They discover the car belongs to Neil Prescott, Sydney's father, so assuming he is the killer, they rush off back to the house. The rest of the partygoers head to the school because they learn Principal Hembry has been killed. So this just leaves Sydney, Billy, Stu, Randy, Gale, and Kenny left at the house. After they finish breaking rule number 1, Sydney begins poking holes into Billy's story. She asks who his one call was while he was arrested, and Billy said his dad. But Sydney recalls the sheriff had to call his dad. But before she could fully learn what's going on, Ghostface shows up behind Billy and stabs him 3 times. He then chases Sydney throughout the house. A cool detail that they added was the fact that Sydney could lock doors, and yet Ghostface would still find a way to her quickly, almost like they knew the layout of Stu's house. Sydney escapes the house by falling off the roof in style. So when Ghostface goes downstairs, we see a very meta moment. Jamie Kennedy, who plays Randy, tells Jamie Lee Curtis to turn around. The killer is behind you. Meanwhile, Ghostface is behind him. Such an amazing meta moment with both actors having the same name. Before Ghostface can take out Randy, they hear Sydney screaming, and realizing she is the main piece of the puzzle, they leave Randy alone. Sydney has made it to Kenny the cameraman, who gets ready to help Randy, but forgets about the delay and gets sliced by Ghostface, who crawls into the news van after Sydney. She makes it out through the back. Dewdrop and Gale finally make it back to the house afterwards. Dewey sends Gale to her van to call for the sheriff and hide there, while he goes into the house searching for the killer. As he searches, the Halloween soundtrack from the living room matches up with him opening doors and turning corners, which, by the way, is absolutely beautiful. Gale gets in the van to escape and lays out Randy in the process, but she doesn't get very far, as Sydney popping out of the tree line causes her to crash. So Sydney runs to the house screaming for Dewey, who opens the front door for her. but he falls back because he's been stabbed in the back. Ghostface rounds the corner and forces Sydney into Dewey's car. She locks the doors and rolls up the windows. She's safe, until she looks over and sees Ghostface actually has the car keys. He begins making Sydney play a game of whack-a-mole with the door locks as they begin unlocking each door. Meanwhile, we see the back hatch open and Ghostface uses that to try and grab her. But she manages to wiggle free and runs to the door, grabbing Dewey's gun. But just then, both Stu and Randy pull up, accusing the other, asking for help. Randy says he found Tatum, while Stu says Randy killed Billy. But let's take a step back real quick. How does he know Billy died? Sydney was the only one upstairs, other than Ghostface, and it's a very small detail missed by many, including me the first time I watched it. But it gives away at least one of the killers. Sydney, being Sydney, says, "Fuck you both," and just locks both of them outside. Turns out Billy's still alive as he falls down the stairs. He takes the gun from Sydney and lets Randy inside, where he says, "Stu has gone mad," and Billy says the iconic line from Psycho, "We all go a little mad sometimes." He shoots Randy in the shoulder and tastes the corn syrup they use as fake blood, just like in Carrie. Sydney runs into Stu. He uses the voice changer, revealing him to be the second killer. We have made it to the monologues. They even revealed they were the ones that killed her mom and framed Cotton. I'm sure they had no help in that planning whatsoever, though. Stu sets the gun down to go and grab Sydney's dad. They cloned her dad's phone and placed the voice changer in his pocket so they can frame him for all the murders. One part of their plan is to stab each other a few times to help with their innocence. But one thing I've never understood is, why do this part of the plan now? Why not wait till the job is finished and then do this? Because it does eventually backfire. It even makes the two not trust each other, as Stu didn't want to give the knife back after stabbing Billy. My outro then follows, where Stu claims they will plan the sequel. Stu goes to grab the gun, but it's gone. Gil has grabbed it. But Billy notices the safety is still on, so he grabs the gun back and Sparta kicks her. Before he can finish her, they see Sydney is gone. She calls the killers and taunts them. This is where Sydney then talks to Stu and we learn his motive. Which, to this day, I don't believe it was his true motive, as Sydney asks what will be the motive he tells the cops. And he says peer pressure and that he is far too sensitive. But I believe that is what he would tell the cops, but it wasn't his true motive. I think his true motive was he just wanted to do it. He thought it was fun, but that's a story for another time. Let's wrap this up. Billy took the phone to cuss out Sydney, and having fake blood all over his hands, the phone slipped out of Skeet Ulrich's hand and accidentally hit Matthew Lillard, causing him to improvise the infamous line, "You hit me with the phone" line.
You can't keep getting away with it! You can't keep getting away with it!
Billy finds her in a closet, but Sydney busts out wearing the Ghostface costume and stabs Billy twice with an umbrella, one of which hit a real-life scar on Skeet Ulrich, which causes a real reaction. He's down for the count, so Stu takes over. They wrestle in the living room, where Sydney knocks him down and drops a TV on his head. But I'm sure he's alive still, right? Billy punches a recently awoken Randy and gets on Sydney and raises up his knife, but is shot by an also recently awakened Gale. The famous one last scare scene happens and Sydney pops Billy in the forehead. The day is saved. Deputy Dewey is alive and wheeled out to an ambulance.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
While Gale goes live, recapping the events of the movie. The film ends fading out over the California hills. So that's the original Scream. Does it hold up to current day slashers? The short answer, yes. It very much so does. Well, yes, the technology is dated in the film, but that doesn't hurt it in the slightest. Where many films begin dating themselves are with its practical and digital effects. But I honestly believe if you took this movie and had someone who had no idea when it was released sit down and watch it, they would just assume it's a period piece. In a sense that they would assume it's a newer movie taking place in the 90s. I honestly would have to rank this movie a solid 10 out of 10. It has been my favorite horror movie for years, and it has again proven why.
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
So you're a liar.
The movie opens up on a theater with a sneak preview of the new film, Stab, available tonight and tonight only. Stab is a film created based on the events of Scream, and get comfortable with them because they follow the sequels from here on out. But who plays Sydney? Surely it's not Tori Spelling, as that's who Sydney did not want to play her in the original.
They get Tori Spelling to play Sid.
Well, damn. Anyways, a couple is here to see this sneak peek. Maureen Evans and her boyfriend Phil Stevens. As they get to their seats, we see plenty of references to the newfound fan base that'll surely never become toxic. Tons of people are dressed as the titular Ghostface, running around with fake knives. During the showing, Maureen goes up to get some popcorn, no butter, and a small Diet Pepsi. Yes, I remembered all that. Before she gets back though, Phil jumps out to scare while wearing a Ghostface mask. Afterwards, he decides to go empty the tank. While he uses the John, he hears some tee-hee-hee type of noises, causing him to want to listen in. So he leans against the nasty, probably never cleaned stall wall and takes a knife to the ear. Ghostface comes back to sit with Maureen while wearing Phil's jacket. He plays the role pretty well until the opening kill happens on Casey Becker. Maureen notices Phil's blood and soon she notices hers, as Ghostface stabs her numerous times with a cheering crowd. She climbs onto the stage in front of the film where she falls out, dying with the crowd slowly realizing what's happening. I'm a big fan of this opening sequence, and while it's not my favorite by no means, I love that it sets up the future by introducing us to the world of Stab and its fan base. We catch up with Sydney, who has been getting prank calls. But this is 1997, it's no longer 1996. She has caller ID and is not afraid of busting it out. We are then introduced to her best friend / roommate, Hallie. Hallie is trying to convince Sydney to join a sorority when they are interrupted of news of the killings. The scene changes to one of my favorite parts of anything Scream related, the classroom scene, where horror films and its rules are discussed. Cece Cooper, Mickey Altieri, Randy Meeks, and their best friends, Film Class Guy 1 and Film Class Guy 2, discuss whether the movies are inherently the root cause of serial killers. Does life imitate the films? Is the killers of this film trying to create a sequel? Well, Randy doesn't seem to think so. He even goes as far to say as sequels suck.
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
Well, Randy, aren't you just so darn meta? They spend the next moment to discuss sequels that may or may not have surpassed their originals. Do you know of any? Has Scream 2 done it? Sydney and Randy go for a walk as they discuss whether or not it's happening again, when they are joined by the bane of Randy's existence, Sydney's boyfriend. Derek is a seemingly good dude, and I love most of the scenes he's in.
Hey, I think I love you.
I said most, brother. Let's calm down. We get a banger sweeping shot of all the cops and news reporters littering the campus. That includes our favorite reporter, Gail Weathers, as she meets up with her new cameraman, Joel. But before they can get any real coverage, they are interrupted by a local reporter named Debbie Salt. After she pushes the reporters away, they all, including our main cast, turn their attention to the police giving a statement on the ongoing investigation. During this, Sid sees our favorite awkward cop, Dwight Riley. Oh, Dewey the Dewdrop. Sydney runs up to greet him, where we learn he's there because he was worried about her after hearing the news. They go for a chat where they talk about Sydney's starring role in a play and how she's got a new boyfriend. But Dewey lets her know he's just worried about her and that he plans on sticking around to keep an eye on her. He plans on also talking to Chief Hartley, who, fun fact, is played by the in real life dad of David Arquette, Louis Arquette. Sid meets back up with the others, but just then a wild gale appears with Cotton Weary, the man that was originally accused with the murder of Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mother. She tries to get a sneaky interview in, but Sydney ain't having none of that and backhands her.
I choose backhand this time.
An amazing thing happens next. Just before leaving, Hallie asks if Joel got that on film in a smug tone, having Joel hit her with the, "Yes, I got that on film."
Did you get that on film? Yes, I got that on film.
I love how actor Dwayne Martin did that scene. So freaking good, dude. Cotton and Joel were both unaware that Sydney wasn't aware of the interview, so they are more or less caught off guard. As Gail storms off, she runs into Dewey, where they have a poor reconnection, where Dewey mentions all the times where she dogged on him in her book. Dewey, being the confidence king, walked away with the dub, and you cannot convince me otherwise. Later that night is our obligatory party scene. While they do their thing, we see Cece. She's on the phone with a friend while watching TV. She gets another call though, so she puts her friend on hold. She believes it to be Ted, but it is not Ted. She informs this man that she is sober sister, basically meaning she's the DD. But like, she could have still gone to the party, just don't partake in any of the drinking. Anyways, after a while, the caller asks if she wants to die tonight. Could you imagine if she just answered no? You want to die tonight? Hee hee. No. Oh, well, okay. Bye, I guess. Cece believes someone is in the house, so she calls campus security. But she gets scared by a fellow sorority girl. As she leaves to go to the party, she tells Cece to set the alarm, which Ghostface then politely reminds her to do so as well. She sets it and walks through the house. Out pops Ghostface from a closet. He chases her up the stairs, reminiscent of how Sydney mentioned in the first movie. She attempts to slow them down by throwing plants and even bikes at them, but she is still tossed off the balcony to her demise. We catch up with Sydney at that party I mentioned. She asks Randy what took him so long, almost like they want him to be a small red herring. Another fun fact, Shaggy, Matthew Lillard, is seen as a background partygoer in this scene. Before the troops are able to really boogie down, they are informed of the death of Cece. Derek tells Sydney to get their jackets so they can go home. We see Derek on the front porch waiting with Sydney, stopping in her tracks, hearing the phone go off. Sydney, being the nice person she is, she goes to answer it, but here's its Ghostface. She tells them to stop being a coward and to show their face.
Then why don't you show your face?
Poor choice of words there, Sid. She turns to see Ghostface at the front door charging her. Derek hears the commotion and meets her around back. He charges in looking for the killer, and soon after, so does Dewey. But all we see is Derek with his arm cut, in a spot that's not gonna have any real lasting issues.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
This begins to spread the seeds of distrust. We cut to the hospital with everyone involved, with the addition of Mickey and Hallie. Mickey doesn't help the situation by asking why would Derek go into the house. Afterwards, we see Dewey, Gail, and the chief discussing the victims. We learn they are copying the killers from the original. Maureen Evans, Phil Stevens, and Casey Cooper, all names of previous victims. Gail and Dewey regroup and decide to tackle some investigations together. Dewey gets a head start when some reporters, including Debbie Salt from earlier, ambushes Gail and begin hurling accusations at Neil Prescott and Dewey. Which is messed up because who knows, the killer could be among them. Mickey joins Derek and Hallie at their lunch table, accusing Randy of possibly being the killer. He gets shushed as Sydney pulls up with her cop buddies, Officer Richards and Officer Andrews. When asked his thoughts, Derek decides to take a note from Zac Efron and sing in the cafeteria. While it holds a special place in my heart, it becomes one of the corniest scenes in the franchise, and Mickey did not help this situation at all by standing up and starting a clap session. Everyone's cheering him on as he jumps around on the lunch tables. But let's be real. You get up and do this in real life. You will not be receiving no cheers or getting dapped up. It's not happening. But then Derek, during the standing ovation, gives Sydney his Greek letters, which is a no-no, and he will pay for that in the future. Dewey and Randy meet up to discuss killers and their motives. Randy believes they are out to make a sequel to cash in on all the new movie madness. So Randy lays out the rules a sequel has to follow. The rules are as follows. 1. The body count is always bigger. 2. The death scenes are more elaborate. Carnage candy. 3. If you ever want to become a franchise, never, ever, Dewey cuts him off. Dewey, come on, brother. We needed that third rule. I'm trying to see if Scream becomes a franchise, man. Randy suggests the killer, or at least one of them, is Mickey. He also suggests Hallie, which, funny enough, in one of the fake scripts made up, had Hallie as one of the killers. Later, Sydney meets up with her drama teacher wanting to quit with everything going on, but he convinces her otherwise by telling her to use her strength and her pain to pull through. So they proceed with a scene rehearsal. It starts off well enough, she's killing it, until she sees one of the masked performers looks to be wearing a Ghostface mask. She believes she's being attacked and it causes the rehearsal to stop. Dewey, Gail, Randy, and main man Joel talk about the killer. But when Gail's previous cameraman is mentioned, Joel understandably leaves. That's when Gail gets a call, but Randy picks it up. It's Ghostface. He talks to the killer as Gail and Dewey run around looking for the caller. Randy stands next to a news van as he badmouths Stu Macher and Billy Loomis. An angry Ghostface then grabs him and yanks him into the van, ending him. Later, Sydney believes the killer to be in the library due to an instant message she received. So the officers have her stand to the side while they look. But then Cotton pops out.
It's free real estate.
Asking for her to join him in an interview with Diane Sawyer. He gets heated when she says no, causing him to be arrested and questioned. Hallie leaves with Sydney as the officers prepare to take them somewhere safe. As for Gail, she gets hounded by Debbie Salt again. And then our cameraman Joel quits and leaves in order to survive, which, can we mention, this is the smartest thing he could have done. Joel on top. As Dewey approaches, they have a chat and come to the realization that the crowd footage Joel shot could reveal the killer relishing in their kills. So they head to campus in order to view the tapes. While watching some footage, things get a little hot and heavy, but then someone changes the mood by playing their own footage. Footage shot by the killer. And think about this. Who do we know walks around with a camera recording random things? Dewey sees them in the projector room. He runs up to them, but they are gone, and instead attacking Gail. Ghostface chases Gail into a recording studio. It's a great scene of the cat chasing the mouse. And as Gail hides away, Dewey walks in and sees her, but since it's soundproof, they can't hear each other. Ghostface begins attacking him from behind.
Hold up, pause.
We see Dewey go down for the count. We catch up with Derek. He tells Sydney bye as she and Hallie are heading off to that safe spot. As he watches them drive off, he gets grabbed by his fraternity brothers as they tie him up to a prop and begin partying. Team Sydney pull up to a stoplight, allowing enough time for Ghostface to also show up, bust open the window, and wipe out Officer Andrews. As Officer Richards gets out of the car, Ghostface then slides across the roof, kicking him. The killer starts the car and runs down Richards. He tries slinging the cop off the windshield, but he can't. They eventually crash into some poles, which goes through Richards and into the car. After realizing their situation, they are left having to crawl over an unconscious Ghostface. As cool and creative as this scene is, I'll never understand it. You have the killer right there, unconscious. Take bro out, dude. Eliminate that man. Send them packing, dude. But no, they escape and run away. But Sydney goes back to see who it is. But they aren't there anymore. They have awoken. Hallie gets grabbed and finished off. Catching back up with Gail for a second, we see her run into Cotton Weary. And believing him to be the killer, she runs outside to the payphone and calls the police. But Debbie Salt is there. Sydney makes it to the school's auditorium. The lights turn on. She's not alone. Stage set pieces begin falling down, keeping her there, which is when a sun prop comes falling down. Derek is still tied to the prop. As she tries to untie him, the killer approaches and reveals themselves to be none other than Mickey. In a last moment, he creates more distrust by calling Derek his partner. Mickey is enjoying himself. He blasts Derek in the chest, ending him. Mickey, he wants to be caught, so he can blame the movies. Sydney tries to escape by fighting with Mickey, but in the end, he stops her. Derek's body shoots up to the sky, and Mickey mentions how he did say he had a partner. And out walks Gail. But it's not her, it's Debbie Salt. Real name, Mrs. Loomis. Debbie shoots Mickey twice, and as he falls down, he shoots Gail, causing her to fall off the stage. Debbie has her villain monologue, but Sydney finds a way to escape. She starts using the set pieces to attack her. Lights are flashing, smoke is rolling, and shit's falling. What a good time. The two roll around with Debbie almost stabbing Sydney, but then a gunshot goes off. Cotton's here. After catching him up to speed a little bit, the two pitch him some ideas, but Sydney's interview wins the round. Well, I guess Debbie won the round because she took a round to the chest. They help Gail back onto the stage and look at Debbie. They always come back. Mickey bursts up, causing Sydney and Gail to light him up like a Christmas tree. Not taking any chances, Sydney pops one into Debbie's forehead. The day is saved yet again. As Gail receives aid, main man Joel comes back, but she does see Dewdrop being wheeled out and goes to him.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Meanwhile, Sydney is being hounded by reporters, but she sends them Cotton's way, as that's his endgame, that fame. The film ends with an aerial shot of the college. Sydney surviving to see another Ghostface. Scream 2 is one of the best sequels. While it doesn't surpass the original, it has added things that makes the franchise what it is today. Stab, for example. That will stick with the franchise forever. Mickey Altieri. If you have seen my old video where I rank every Ghostface, then you would know he was one of my favorites. If you haven't checked that video out, well, there it is at the top of your screen. Soon, I will have to update it, but Scream 2. It's high up there for me. I will have to rank this film a 9 out of 10. It holds its own in a franchise with mostly good films. Mostly.
Hey, Dewdrop.
He said it!
The film opens up to a helicopter flying overhead the Hollywood sign, as we hear of a major accident causing a traffic jam on the freeway. Cotton Weary is talking to his agent about future shows. Bro has made it big off his events of the previous films. He gets a call from a fan, but as they talk, the fan turns something off. Then we hear Ghostface's voice telling Cotton they are outside his girlfriend's bathroom door. Ghostface then asks where Sidney Prescott is, but Cotton given the wrong answer, Ghostface hangs up the phone, causing Cotton to speed home. As we see Christine walking around their home, we see that the phone line has been cut. What If by Creed starts blaring, causing her to investigate. She believes it to be Cotton as we hear his actual voice talking to her, but it's not. Out pops Ghostface attacking her. She manages to buy some time by locking herself in a room. The real Cotton then arrives and begins the search, grabbing a fire poker along the way. Cotton finds the locked door and breaks it down, and he finds Christine, but she believes him to be her attacker, so she starts swinging on bro. Ghostface is walking up behind her, and as Cotton warns her, he takes a shot to the dome piece, while Christine takes a shot to the back from Ghostface. They then wrestle with Cotton until he lets one loose into his chest, ending the opening sequence by telling Cotton,
You lose.
not the best opening scene. I enjoyed it for what it was, but as you have noticed, the tool Ghostface has in this one is a voice changer like in every film, but this one can fully replicate anyone's voice, even in person. Not my cup of tea, but other than that, I did enjoy the back and forth of Christine and Cotton. We open back up with our girl Sydney. She has become secluded and has many locks and alarms protecting her property. She works as a crisis helpline employee under the name Laura. Next, we catch up with Gail and her haircut. She's speaking with a college class about journalism and reporting, and as she wraps it up, the professor informs her someone is here for her. It's Detective Mark Kincaid. He lets Gail know about Cotton, and he reveals a photo that was left at the scene. A photo of Maureen Prescott. We show up to a large production set of Stab 3 as the song Red Right Hand shows itself once again in the franchise. The cast of Stab 3 discuss possible theories, such as Sidney being the killer or some upset fan mad that they killed Randy off. I wonder if that becomes a motive one day. Gail's haircut arrives on set and runs into her Stab 3 actor, Jennifer Jolie, along with her bodyguard, Joe Swanson, and technical advisor, Dewey the Dewdrop Riley. Gail eventually gets tossed out, and I'm only mentioning that for this part. As she is getting kicked out, a tour of the facilities is taking place, with Jay and Silent Bob in attendance. Later, Sydney is asleep on her couch as she is having a nightmare of her mom walking up to her. She calls her poison, and that Sydney is just like her. As Sydney checks it out, Ghostface pops up, smashing the window, causing her to fall back. She looks to the window, seeing it's not broken though. Sarah Darling heads to the set to meet up with Roman, where she begins hearing noises, causing her to be on edge. She gets a call from Roman, and they talk scenes, but again, it's not actually Roman. Ghostface threatens her while she runs to hide. And as she hides among other Ghostface costumes and props, the real one surfaces. She tries to fight back, but everything is a prop, except for that nasty left hook. And, well, the knife. I actually enjoyed this sequence a lot. Her talking scenes, and then her trying to fight back, but everything being a prop was nice. The scene was shorter than I remember, though. Dewey and Gail have a nice little sit-down together and talk the situation. He believes someone on set wants to find out Sydney's location, so Dewey leaves to go to Jennifer's home to help her, with Gail following him. Jennifer is upset as they learn about Sarah's death. Here is where we discover something big. Ghostface is killing people in the order they die in the script. Jennifer, Gail, is next on the chopping block. Dewey tells Stone that he is going to the crime scene, and here's where we get the iconic name I Live By gets introduced.
Hey, Dewdrop.
Remember when I said the killer is following the script? Well, Kincaid lets us know that there are 3 versions of the script with different outcomes. So now we don't know which one the killer read. Roman is freaking out about his movie being put on hold, but then the detectives begin accusing him as reporters are saying he called Sarah for a meeting at the set, where she, well, died. He claims he didn't call her though. Catching up with Sydney, she's on the phone with someone as part of her crisis hotline job. The voice sounds oddly like Maureen Prescott. They claim they killed someone, and the call delves deep into a creepiness where they say they are mother. She tells Sydney to turn on the news, and when she does, she learns about the second death. We catch up to most of the remaining cast. Tom is going through it, ripping up scripts and hurling accusations at Angelina. Gail, being Gail, arrives via no invitation. She gets busted by Stone though, so her and Dewey go off to talk, but instead of talking about the relationship, Gale tells us that they released Roman. His phone didn't call Sarah, but a clone phone did, just like in the original. We also learned that 2 years before Maureen met Sid's father, she actually left Woodsboro, but no one knows why, except someone does. Dewdrop notices Maureen's location is actually the backlot of the studios. As Stephen Stone is investigating Dewey's trailer, he is attacked and seemingly killed. That is, until he scares the group by falling dead in front of them. As the power is cut out, script pages begin printing out the fax machine. Dewey and Gale, knowing it's gotta be a trap, force everyone outside, while Tom rushes back in to read the final page, but all it says is, "Whoever smells the gas." The house blows up big time, taking Tommy Boy with it, as Dewey, Gale, and Jennifer roll down the hill. Dewey walks down more to see Gale, but he also sees Ghostface rushing at her. Being the absolute marksman he is, dude, he lights dude up in the chest. But being the also clumsy dude he is, he slips and falls the rest of the way down the hill. Ghostface uses that opportunity to escape. Before the scene ends, they find another picture where the killer claims they killed Maureen Prescott, not Billy or Stu. Kincaid wants to locate Sydney to question her, so Dewey is forced to reach out to her, but she doesn't answer. Because she beat him to the punch. She's actually at the precinct already. Sydney tells Kincaid to take her to the set where the pictures have been taken. As the team arrives, they run into Martha Meeks, Randy's sister. She plays a VHS tape for them titled Scary Movies 101. It's Randy. He gives us another set of rules. We are dealing with a trilogy. The rules are as follows. 1. The killer will be superhuman. 2. Anyone, including the main character, can die. 3. The past will come back to bite you in the ass. Thank you, Randy. We will miss you and your movie knowledge. Gil heads to the archives and she is joined by Jennifer Jolie. Their banter back and forth is one of the highlights of this movie. When they make it to the basement, they talk to Bianca, played by Carrie Fisher, as they mention she looks just like her. This movie is filled with meta moments like this, and it's just so nice. Bianca shows them some movies Maureen Prescott was in, and we learn all of them were John Milton's movies. Meanwhile, Sydney's in the bathroom trying to regain her composure, while she hears and sees some boots in the bathroom stall, similar to the original. But this time, Sydney just bursts open the door to find Angelina Tyler stealing some props as souvenirs, which creates the start of a theory, one that has Angelina Tyler as a Ghostface. But that's a story for another time. Let me know if that's something you actually would like to see. Anyways, Sydney follows her because she left one of the props. Sydney is now on set. She is in her old room where she reminisces on Billy. As she looks out the window, the door shuts. Sydney uses this time to lock the door by using the closet door against it, but she's looking in the wrong area. Ghostface appears from the window, yanking her outside. She runs back inside and has a scuffle very similar to her first encounter in the original. She makes it to her parents' room where she begins hearing Billy and Stu talk about her mom again. And she even gets tormented by who she believes to be the ghost of her mom again. Dewey and the detectives arrive on scene. Later, we see Roman confessing his problems to John Milton, the man who produced the movies with Maureen in them. Gil and the others arrive, and before Roman leaves, Jennifer wishes him a happy birthday. Afterwards, we learn from Milton the disgusting depravity that is Hollywood. He confesses he was well known for his parties. Many innocent people seeking fame would be used and controlled by Milton, and his excuse? It was the 70s. It was a different time. He may not be the killer, but he's certainly evil. Jennifer, Gale, and Dewey receive a call from who they believe to be Sydney, asking them to go to the party, so they pull up. Roman and Jennifer walk off together and he hits us with a classic line, "We'll be right back." Dewey and Gale call the number back and they hear a phone ringing in the closet. It's lying on top of a Ghostface costume next to this stupid piece of horse hockey piss in a cup voice changer, dude. I'm sorry, I just hate that thing. It's so unrealistic. To this day, we still don't have something that can perfectly mimic someone's voice. I mean, we low-key are getting scarily close with AI though. They separate to try and find the others. Dewey finds Tyson while Gale finds the basement Roman and Jennifer were at. She heads inside and finds a coffin with a recently stabbed Roman inside. She checks his pulse. Nothing. Remember that. Jennifer pops out of hiding, and as they run out, they find Angelina, who then hits them with the coldest line in the film by calling them second-rate celebrities. But don't fret, she is immediately taken out. This next scene, bear with me, a lot happens very quickly. Dewey meets up with the girls only to be decked in the jaw. Ghostface chases them into the room Tyson was in. Dewey turns Ghostface around so he can get slashed on the arm and thrown to the ground. But my boy Tyson backs him up by slamming him into the dresser, only to get stabbed himself. Jennifer runs and hides in the closet while Gail throws a lamp at him. And while Tyson makes a break for it, Ghostface chases after him. He makes it to a long hallway where Ghostface pulls the metaphorical and literal rug out from under his feet, causing him to hit a mean flip. He grabs Tyson and tosses him over the balcony. Afterwards, Jennifer runs into Ghostface, who backs her into a corner. She is on the other side of a one-way mirror that has a disgusting meaning. Dewey notices Jennifer banging on the mirrors, but since they are one-way mirrors, he can't actually see her. So, he shoots them out, but not before she gets stabbed. Very soon after, Gail is grabbed, and her and Ghostface fall down into the basement. Ghostface is knocked out. Dewey notices she is gone, and that so is Tyson. He begins looking for her and finds them in the basement. The silliest scene then follows. Dewey opens the door to find Ghostface waking up. He shoots Ghostface. Wait, no. Brother, your gun is not loaded, dude. So Ghostface throws his knife at him, Call of Duty style. But the butt of the knife hits his forehead, causing him to tumble down the stairs. Like, dog, why is your gun not loaded? You had one job, dude. At the precinct, Sidney gets a call from Ghostface. He has Gail and Dewey hostage, forcing Sidney to come out to her rescue.
You can't keep getting away with this! You can't keep getting away with it!
Before leaving though, she suits up and she grabs a little bang bang. Arriving to the party, she is forced to use a metal detector and has to toss her gun. She finds Dewey and Gail tied up. But before that, she gets attacked. Having outsmarted Broseph, she pulls out a second gun and lights Broheem up like a Christmas tree. Kincaid soon arrives, making himself look awfully suspicious, but then Ghostface comes from behind and lunges for Sidney. Seeing this, Kincaid throws her out of the way, taking a little stab, and proceeds to have a scuffle with him. After he wins the fight, Ghostface chases Sidney to a room where she locks him out. Before he can break in, Sidney finds a hidden room behind a bookcase. Like this shit's some kind of Scooby-Doo episode. How she knew one of those books would open up a hidden wall is beyond me. Either way, it's not looking too good though, as Ghostface found another way in and has her locked in. Time for the reveal. The killer was her own brother, Roman Bridger.
Roman Bridger, director.
And brother.
Who? He reveals everything actually started from him. He created Billy. He caused him and Stu to start their spree. He pulls out Milton, who he then ends. Afterwards, he and Sid have a final battle. When Roman begins to overpower her and win, Dewey knocks the power out and Kincaid picks the lock and sneaks in. He then gets folded like an omelet when Ghostface blasts a chair over his head. He takes Kincaid's gun and pops her twice in the chest. He turns away and comes back only to see she is gone. Meanwhile, Gail and Dewey found the door to bust down. Roman calls her phone and hears it's behind him. Sid pops out, stabbing him twice, taking him to the ground as she reveals she too was wearing a bulletproof vest. She stabs him in the chest, and as he falls out, he holds onto her hand. But remember, you gotta shoot him in the head. So Dewey finally nabs himself a win by finally ending Roman. The movie ends with everyone getting together at Sid's house. Dewey proposes to Gail, and we get a shot of Sidney opening the gate to her property, symbolizing her opening herself back up to the idea of moving on and trusting others. Kincaid tells her to come and sit. They have a movie ready. The film ends with a shot of Sidney's door creaking open, but sealing her progression and allowing herself to let others in. She walks away. Scream 3 honestly wasn't as bad as I remember. It had its moments though, so don't think I thought it was some kind of masterpiece. I was not, and still not a fan of the voice changer aspect. It's just too out of the realm of realism in a franchise that is somewhat grounded. The film is one of the weaker entries in the franchise, and for me, was the weakest for a while, but it might have actually been beaten out. Who knows? Stay tuned to find out. But what do I rank this movie? It's a solid 6.5 out of 10. It's good, it's enjoyable and fun, but it does take some missteps along the way.
In fact, the only surefire way to survive a modern horror movie, you pretty much have to be gay.
This is a load of barnacles.
Scream 4 has always been a well-regarded sequel in my eyes, with a well-rounded and intense killer to back up the fresh storyline. The The film opens up onto two friends, Sherry and Trudy, as they receive a call from our titular killer. Eventually, Sherry opens the door and steps outside, but no one is out there, so we think. Out steps Ghostface, slashing Trudy's throat, but before Sherry can run, out jumps a second Ghostface. Title card. Yep, that was fake. It was a movie. Friends Rachel and Chloe are arguing over the Stab franchise. Chloe, aggravated, calls out Rachel by stabbing her. Then title card. Yep, another fake out. But that was the last one, I promise. Jenny and Marnie were watching the latest Stab film. After some time, Ghostface, the real one this time, calls Jenny to threaten her. He tosses Marnie through the glass door and chases Jenny throughout the house. The game of cat and mouse ends when he stabs her in the back and she falls into the garage. In an homage to Tatum, Ghostface uses the garage door by having it go up and then slam down onto her back. He then finishes her off with an off-screen stab as the title card slashes onto our screens. Not my favorite opening scene. In fact, it's my least favorite of the franchise. I get it, the fake outs are meta and different, but once was enough. Twice was just mean, dude. Had me not trusting if Marnie and Jenny were real, considering they were watching a movie, in a movie. But before we are introduced to our new friend group, we catch up with our big three. Sydney is back in Woodsboro to promote her new book, Out of the Darkness. Dewey wakes up to a call and gets ready for work. Our boy got that promotion. He is now the sheriff of Woodsboro. As he leaves, we see Gail sleeping in their bed, still married after 10 whole years. Next up, we meet Kirby, a horror movie buff who is a personal fan favorite of mine, as she speeds down the road to pick up her two friends, Olivia Morris and final girl newcomer Jill Roberts. As they head to school, we learn Jill has recently broken up with her cheater boyfriend, Trevor Sheldon, who has both called Kirby and Olivia in hopes of reaching out. They arrive to Woodsboro High, where they run into the film club members, Robbie and Charlie. Robbie hounds them with questions as it's the anniversary of the original murders. Robbie has this 24/7 live stream camera strapped to his head, which, by the way, bro would have thrived in the 2020s, as that IRL live streaming thing has become its own subgenre at this point. Later, we see Sydney at one of her book signings with her manager Rebecca as Gail and the police arrive. Dewey and Deputy Judy Hicks track a cell phone to Sydney's rental car. Someone planted evidence in her trunk, forcing her to stay in Woodsboro as she is now a part of the investigation. Which, by the way, I really like that, because otherwise Sydney could have just left. So I like that they actually had a reason to force her to stay. While Dewey is asking Sydney some questions, Gail heads over after eating one of Judy's lemon squares and tries to enter the room. But Judy keeps her out, leading to some of the best lines of the movie. When Gail calls Judy Betty Crocker, it caught me off guard. It was so good, dude. And don't get me started on this.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
Dewey and Sydney ask Jill, Olivia, and Kirby some questions because Jill and Olivia received a call from Ghostface. Catching up with Gail, as she leaves the station, she runs into Rebecca, who is not the best at having a human conversation. She is extremely rude. As the day winds down, Sydney prepares for bed at the Roberts residence. She goes to tell Jill goodnight, and meanwhile Jill is having a conversation with her ex-boyfriend, who loves to enter and exit through a window, similar to a previous ex-boyfriend. Speaking of Trevor, bro just loves to be a red herring. He is not helping his case by lurking around corners and saying killer things. Bro has a whole arrow saying, "Hey guys, I should be a suspect." Perkins and Hans, two officers stationed outside Jill's house, watch as Olivia goes home. While Jill and Kirby watch Shaun of the Dead, Olivia has started calling Sydney the Angel of Death. After some time, Jill receives a call from who they believe to be Trevor, but in reality, it's a whispering Ghostface.
How did you know that?
Because I'm standing in the closet.
Excuse me, was you saying something?
Wonder why he's whispering. He tells them that he is in the closet, but when Kirby checks, no one's there. But he never said he was in their closet. Out they pop from across the street, attacking Olivia. He stabs, slashes, and tears her apart, tossing her through the upstairs window. It's a very gory kill for the franchise. In fact, it's one of the most intense kills Ghostface has ever pulled off. Before we are able to get comfortable though, Ghostface pops out, slashing Jill's arm, similar to Derek in Scream 2. But unlike Scream 2, Sydney beats the brakes off, bro, but they escape as she looks away. Trevor's guilty ass comes around the corner asking what happened. Sydney did claim a battle scar, so she heads to the hospital. Gail runs into Charlie and Robbie and sets up a meeting with them and Sydney, and in return, they give them their knowledge of the new age horror film buffs. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Sydney fires her manager because Rebecca doesn't care about the victims and those that the story hurts. Rebecca, being fired and all, heads to the parking garage so she can leave. But it's not going to be that easy. She gets a call from someone wanting to speak with Sydney. She says she will take a message, but then Ghostface claims Rebecca herself is the message. Which is so wild, by the way. Could you imagine that? And one, why is Rebecca even saying that she'll take a message? Rebecca, dog, you're fired, dude. What are you doing? She rushes to her car, and once in, she checks her surroundings. Seeing nothing, she tries to peel out, but her car is goofing on her. Ghostface drops down onto her car, scaring her. Having to leave the safety of her car, she takes off running to the stairs. She grabs at the handle, but it breaks off. She turns around to see Ghostface charging her, stabbing her deep in the gut. During this, Dewey and the police force are giving a public briefing on the situation that has been unfolding. Mirroring the scene of when Ghostface fell from above onto Rebecca's car, we hear a scream, and as everyone turns to look, we see Rebecca falling from above, landing on a news van down below. This death scene was always one of my favorites of the movie, but the one thing I don't get, and I have never gotten, is why did the door handle just come off so easily? I don't know, maybe I missed something, let me know. The next day, Sydney and Gail honor their end of the deal by showing up to the film club's meeting. Sydney notices the gear Robbie is wearing and asks, so, you film your entire high school appearance and post it on the net? And he just answers that soon everyone will be doing it. And by God is he right. TikTok, Instagram, you name it, it has it. Everyone posts their entire lives onto social media. And Robbie Mercer knew it would happen back in 2011. Wild. Oh, by the way, this club is basically our classroom scene of the film. Charlie and Robbie fill in for our beloved Randy here. But they can never replace you, big dog, trust. From them, we learned the rules to making a scream make, as dubbed by them. A new version of a remake, one that still has rules to follow, just rules that have changed. 1. The unexpected is the new cliche. 2. The opening sequence has to blow the doors off. 3. The kills have to be more extreme. 4. The rules are reversed from the original. But never fear, for they also gave us the apparently only surefire way to survive these scream makes. You have to be gay. Yeah, it's very silly. And it comes back into play later. After we hear these so-called rules from the off-brand Timu Randy wannabes, they clue us in on a major party happening that night. Third act has to have a party. This one is called the Stabathon. It's pretty clear what that entails, but it's a marathon of all the stab movies. Sydney and Gail leave without knowing the party's location, but that's never stopped Gail before. But before that, we do see Sydney talking to Jill about her past and Jill's present. I love their bonding here, as it seems like the passing of the torch through their family ties. Kirby talks to Jill as she arrives at the killer's wet dream, a full-on barn turned into a party with a projector and dozens of drunk teens. And since it's obvious the killer will show up, Trevor's also here.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting.
I mean, why wouldn't he be? Apparently, right? Brother is a red herring. Might as well call him that. Trevor Red Herring Sheldon. Anyways, as stab 1 begins, we see Gail has arrived and begun placing 4 cameras around the barn in order to keep watch, similar to how she did in the original. But 2 can play at that game. We see someone has started turning every camera as to not allow Gail to see anything. And before they cover up the final camera, Ghostface shows their face, acting like bro's trying to FaceTime his crush or something. After talking to Gail on the phone, Dewey turns on his sirens and begins flying there. Multiple things begin happening here, all at once. As Dewey arrives to the farm, he sees Gail on the camera, and behind her, a fast approaching Ghostface. He begins attacking her while the climax of Stab's opening plays on in the background. Dewey shows up as they stab Gail on the shoulder, and he scares them away with a few rounds, because apparently Dewey does target practice with his eyes closed. Here is where we learn a partial motive. This time around, the killer is making the movie. Catching up with the boys Haas and Perkins, as they do have some of the best back and forth sequences in the movie. They aren't alone, and neither is Sydney and Kate. Sydney sees a set of wind chimes hanging that she takes down, while Haas heads back to Perkins after his perimeter check. Haas then gets backstabbed, and Perkins he took a knife to the noggin, deep too, and he gets out of the car in order to start shadowboxing, only to fall to his knees and say the best final words of anyone. Fuck Bruce Willis.
Fuck Bruce Willis.
While this scene is silly, it's actually based on a true story Wes Craven read about where a man took a knife to the brain-filled cavity and just casually walked into a hospital. Crazy, dude. Remember when I mentioned Sydney and Kate also weren't alone? That's because they are now getting attacked. At the back door, Sid sees those same wind chimes are back up, and in the reflection, she sees a Ghostface mask. So she shuts the door and they run to the front door. Ghostface is there, but they manage to shut the door on them. But not before Kate received a bloody knife in the mail.
You've got mail.
We see the knife exiting the mail slot as Kate falls forward. Sydney flees the scene as she races to Kirby's house to try and save Jill. Welcome to the final act. The remaining survivors of the friend group and Trevor try to regroup as they learn Trevor was invited by Jill, but at the same time, no one. Again, red herring, dude. Robbie heads outside to drink his pain away and to increase it more as he comes face to face with our main man Ghostface. He gets stabbed once in the stomach and a second time in the back as he tries to flee. He gets thrown down to the ground, but before the money shot, Ghostface stops as Robbie says that there are rules. He busts open his sacred book of bullshit and claims he is gay in order to try and live. But Ghostface ain't having it and delivers the final blow as we then cut back to Kirby. Jill comes downstairs to meet up with her, wanting to find their missing friends, and Trevor. They decide to check outside but get jump scared by Sydney, who has just arrived. But so has Robbie. Apparently his one stupid rule and he's dead. Yep, that rule is cheeks, Robbie. Ghostface chases Sydney onto the roof while Jill hides under the bed. This gives her just enough time to call Dewey and have the whole police department alerted. She eventually meets up and hides with Kirby, who then sees Charlie stuck outside begging to be let in. Not able to trust him, she doesn't let him in. That's when Ghostface then grabs him and the lights shut off. Paying homage to the original, once again, we see Kirby having to answer trivia in order to try and save Charlie. But again, she is tricked. She heads outside to untie him, man. His thanks for saving him? He stabbed her twice in the gut, leaving her to die. Yup, nice guy Charlie. Afterwards, Charlie finds Sydney and grabs her, but she gets away from him only to get stabbed by a second Ghostface. Jill, her own family. Can you believe it? Sydney's own family out to get her, dude? Crazy, who could even think of that? During the monologues, Charlie tosses out a tied up Trevor, and Jill shoots bro in the PP, dude.
Let it out. Let it out.
Like, holy crap, dude. Just take me out at that point. Send me packing. I couldn't do it. He gets spared with one going to the forehead. Jill and Charlie begin the whole stab each other stuff in homage to Billy and Stu. But unlike them, Jilly goes for the heart, ending Charlie as she wants all the fame for herself. Jill lets one rip into Sid's gut, and believing she won, she begins the best scene of the film, and the scene that turned Jill into one of the best ghost faces of all time. She uses Trevor's hands to scratch and rip out some hair, followed by a self-shoulder stab. Then she runs face first into a picture frame, causing glass to cut up her face. And to finish it off, she jumps back onto the glass coffee table. She lays down next to Sydney, securing herself as a victim. Dewey finally arrives after like 45 days and sees the bloodbath. Everyone is wheeled out and either taken to the morgue or to the hospital. As she is wheeled out, Jill is hounded by reporters, giving her the sense of victory and the fame she so craved. At the hospital, we learn some crazy stuff. Jill mentions her matching wounds with Gail and that Sydney is still alive. As Dewey goes to Gail, Jill goes to Sydney. But after realizing Jill's slip up, he rushes to help Sydney, and that he does. He rushes in and gets bashed over the head over and over again by a bedpan. But he does help in a way by calling for Judy, who then saves Gail by tackling her out of the way. But then Jill does take Judy's gun and lands one in her chest, which is when she begins holding Gail at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Sydney has started charging the defibrillator. She uses it and clears her mind. Not knowing when enough is enough, Jill goes for the kill shot one more time, only to get one to the chest, ending her. But unlike Jill, Judy survived her chest shot due to her bulletproof vest. The movie ends with reporters talking about Jill being a hero, not yet knowing what she did. Scream 4 is a great sequel that begins the process of passing the torch from the old to the new generation. No longer was Sydney the primary focus, as although Jill was a Ghostface, she was the surrogate final girl that sought to eliminate Sydney to truly be the only final girl. Which, that's the one thing I also love about this movie. Jill being a killer was not very predictable, and her motive was a fresh take besides revenge. I will have to rate Scream 4 at 8 out of 10. It was a great film with some interesting and fresh directions.
Hello, Sheriff Judy.
No! This is Patrick!
The movie opens up on a girl receiving a call on her landline. Tara Carpenter, sister of Sam, is texting her friend Amber complaining about the outdated technology. Eventually, she answers it with a man calling themselves Charlie, a friend of her mother's from group. During the movie, we hear a lot about their mom, Christina, but she doesn't show her face like at all. Anyways, Tara lets them know that her favorite scary movie is The Babadook. Great movie, by the way, but the best is Wild. She calls it elevated horror, but Charlie, aka the killer, isn't quite a fan.
That sounds kind of boring to me.
So they begin terrorizing her, forcing her to take part in their game. As per usual, the game ends in a trick question. When asked who was the killer and stabbed, she correctly guesses Billy Loomis. But the way the question was worded had her not also saying Stu Macher. Bro did her dirty with the wording. Sarah runs to the door only to find Ghostface. She gets slashed but is able to shut the door after Falcon punching him. She uses her security system on her phone to lock the door, but someone keeps unlocking it, leading me to guess one of the suspects. Ghostface comes around the corner, stabbing her and throwing her down, only to break her leg. They bring the knife down, but get stopped by Tara's hand as the knife goes through it. As the cops pull up, Ghostface slashes us into the title card. Spoilers, she survived this encounter, and this opening scene is pretty great for me. I love the twist on the usual opening kill. Add on to that, the brutality was intense for the franchise. I also love Jenna Ortega's performance here, really well done. Later is when we meet Sam and her boyfriend Richie.
What'd you just take?
Your boner pills.
You are my boner pills.
They are taking a break from work as she receives a call from Wes informing her of the attack. So she heads back to Woodsboro, but not without her boyfriend Richie. Speaking of my boy Wes though, when we meet him is when we also meet the rest of the friend group. Amber Freeman, Tara's closest friend. Chad and Mindy Meeks, nephew and niece of the late and great Randy. Liz McKenzie, a nothing character with her entire role being reduced to actually being boring. Oh, she does date Chad though, so there's that. And lastly, Wes Hicks, son of Judy Hicks, the newly appointed sheriff of Woodsboro. Chad wants Liz to accept his location tracking offer, and trust me, I mention this because it does and will come back later. Before the scene ends, we meet a man with the most scenes in the film. My boy Vince. He's a weirdo stalker creep following his ex Liz wherever she goes.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting.
After he leaves, they head to the hospital to speak to a recently awakened Tara. Meanwhile, we catch up with Sam and Richie as they are arriving to Woodsboro, where big man Richie mentions he's never seen the Stab film. Oh, is that so? Not a fan of Stab, are we, huh? Right. They do finally arrive to the hospital, and when they do, everyone is kicked out in order to allow the sisters to talk. This scene is very emotional and the scene ended. It was heading in the right direction, but it was just cut quite short. The friend group, minus the sisters and Richie, are all at a bar, even though they're all in high school. They are talking about the events of the past as Vince pulls up, hitting on Liz. Chad Chad tries to out-macho him, and it's starting to look ugly as Vince, the dirty dishwasher Snyder, pulls out a knife. Before it could turn real ugly though, they get thrown out. Get out! We cut to nice guy Vince as he finishes up his potty break against the wall outside. Behind him, we see someone dash by. His car cranks on with the headlights on. The engine revs as the song Red Right Hand plays. Assuming it to be Chad, Vince approaches but sees no one. That's because Ghostface is behind him. He shanks Bro one quick time in the throat and watches as Vince falls down, quickly bleeding out as he crawls away. This scene is pretty cool. I love the use of red right hand, but this scene, and a lot of the movie, suffers from the deleted scene syndrome. Vince originally had a scene in the bar with Dewey, and his death scene was drawn out more. Wasted potential in my eyes, but it was still good, just could have been better. Sam and Richie are at the hospital still, and while Richie decides to watch the stab movies on his phone, this leads Sam to go out and find something to eat. But what she really goes to do is to take her meds in peace, as she is seeing her dad as a vision. Her dad is Billy Loomis. It is nice seeing Skeet Ulrich back in the fold, but it is kind of an overplayed card by the end of the film. After she takes her meds, she gets a call from Ghostface and proceeds to get attacked in that break room. But when she makes it Officer Vincent, clearly Ghostface was gone. Judy is asking Richie, Sam, and Amber questions in Tara's hospital room. You can clearly tell Judy and Sam aren't the fondest of each other. Because of everything going on, Sam decides to own up to her past and tell Tara why their dad left and why Ghostface is targeting them. Again, because Billy Loomis is her dad. Tara did not like hearing this and proceeds to kick Sam out of her room. Very emotional scene, by the way, from these two actresses. It's nice when the scene actually gets to play out and isn't cut off in the first 30 seconds. Hint, hint, dude, take the hint. Sam and Richie decide to consult an expert on the situation, which is when we pull up on my boy Dewey the Dewdrop Riley. As we clearly see, his life has fallen apart though. Bro is no longer the sheriff, he's no longer with Gel, and he downs the liquor bottle. Sad to see the fall from grace for my boy, but best believe he's still on top. Best believe that, dude. As they sit down in his living room, Dewey immediately accuses Richie and follows it up with the rules to survive a horror movie.
Who's he?
Let it out. Let it out.
The rules are as follows. 1. Never trust the love interest. 2. The killer's motive always ties to the past. 3. And most important, the first victim always has a friend group the killer is a part of. Thank you for filling in for the man Randy, Dewey. We appreciate you, my boy. As they leave, Dewey texts Gail about the situation and calls Sydney to inform her and to tell her to be safe. He tells her, something about this one just feels different. And while he is mostly wrong, there's one scene in particular that has him be more right than I ever wanted. Love seeing Sydney interact with our dude, but they needed more scenes for sure. Everyone, including the Dewdrop, show up to the Meeks household. It was very nice to see Martha Meeks again, and Sam tells everyone about her dad. And this is where we discuss who the killer is in the group. For example, Wes accuses Dewey.
Oh, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do about it. We don't want to do this today. Ooh, yeah.
Mindy realizes the killer is making a requel. She explains why the killer is doing it and explains the possible motive. They are writing their own version of Stab 8, but making it a requel, tying the new back into the old. Mindy tells Wes, since his mom is in the shitty sequel, he's safe, but that her and Chad aren't. Ironic. Judy is getting ready to leave in order to pick up some sushi when her son Wes comes home from a run. She leaves while he goes to take a shower. While Judy is driving, she gets a call from Ghostface, who then threatens her son, causing her to lose all logic and reason. She speeds home and tries to call Wes, but since he's in the shower, he doesn't notice her call. Ghostface proves he is in their house by pulling out a Psycho reference. When Judy finally arrives home, she rushes to the front door. But out pops Ghostface, stabbing her to the ground. In broad daylight, he finishes her off with a flurry of blows. Meanwhile, Wes has finished his shower and begins setting the table for dinner. During this extended scene, we get multiple instances of fake-outs, where we assume Ghostface to be, and he's not. It culminates in Wes going to the front door after realizing it's open. He shuts the door and turns to see Ghostface charging him. Ghostface is pushing the knife as Wes reaches for the taser. Unable to reach it and unable to fight back, Ghostface is able to slowly and painfully shove the knife into the side of his neck, ending him. This scene is one of the best of the film. The abrupt and sudden kill of Judy was intense and caught me off guard. Tied to the fact that it was in the daylight, just sealed it as a crazy scene. Wes, although, deserved more screen time, but he did have a cool and fun scene with a death scene that looked very painful. Like, yeah, it was the one stab, but it was like slow. Like, dude, come on. Sam, Dewey, and now Gail arrive to the crime scene. Gail and Dewey have a very heavy scene, cluing us into their separation. They are just two different people at two different points in their lives. Very sad. Sam sees Tara's protective custody is at the scene, so she and Dewey race to the hospital. Also, dead meat cameo, let's go. Back at the hospital, Tara hears a crashing sound, leaving her to try and peace out, understandably. Before she can make it out of the room, the power cuts out and she gets a call from Sam. She wheels out seeing a dying cop. She checks, but their gun is gone. Down the way, a door opens, so she hides in a room, and when they enter, she smacks them over the head with a landline phone. It's just Richie. But Ghostface is right behind him. He gets slashed and thrown to the ground. Tara slowly and painfully tries to will away while Ghostface answers Sam's call. They have her pick between the two, but Sam smartly was using this call to buy her some time for the elevator doors to open. But before we keep going, could you imagine if Sam actually just picked somebody? She was like, Tara, kill Richie. Alright, yeah, just pick him off, dude. I don't care. Do him. Just go ahead, kill him. That would have been crazy, dude. Just seeing Ghostface like, okay. But anyway, Dewey shoots at them, causing them to run. As Dewey carries Richie towards the elevator, an absolute asshole smashes him into a trophy case thing. Luckily, Dewey fights them off and shoots them. But unluckily, he decides to go back for the head. He has his badass walk as he reloads his revolver, but he gets a call from Gale causing him to look down. Ghostface stabs him in the stomach. Then, with another knife in the back, Dewdrop is killed as they drive the knives deeper. The last thing he sees is a picture of when him and Gale were happy. Ghostface ends the scene saying,
It's an honor.
"You're damn right, you ass crack. That was my boy."
I'm sorry.
Gale reunites with Sydney after the passing of our beloved Dewey. While it was a cool scene and a decent death, I can't help but dislike it simply because of the sequel, Scream 6. More on that when I review that film. But, long story short, why have the high stakes and kill Dewey, but not have high stakes ever again?
Max, what do you want for dinner?
Justice.
Anyway, Sam grabs a high on painkillers Tara and plans to leave Woodsboro with Richie and her sister. Sydney tries to convince her not to leave, as you will be followed. She doesn't listen to her and dips out anyways. Sam, trust me when I say this. Sydney knows what she is talking about, dude. As they leave though, Sydney pulls a Gale Weathers by placing a tracker on their car. Tara's bag doesn't have her inhaler, so they decide to head to Amber's house to try and receive it. We jump to Amber as she is throwing a house party with the rest of the surviving friend group as a memorial for our boy Wes. It has two meanings, one for the character Wes, but another to pay homage to the legendary Wes Craven, who sadly passed back in 2015, as the teens shout, "For Wes." Also in this scene, I could be tripping, but I think Matthew Lillard is in this scene. Now, slow down, not saying physically, but more or less we hear his voice. Now, tell me I'm wrong, but doesn't his sound like our boy Stu saying, "Hey, pretty cool house," which makes sense when you know where Amber lives. She notices they are out of beer, so in homage to Tatum from the original, she heads to the basement to get more. A cool scene follows as Mindy and Amber have a back and forth about what if they were the killer. Liz and Chad are PDAing all over the couch, and she offers to go upstairs to tickle the pickle, but leaves angrily as Chad isn't sure if she is the killer or not. Can you blame him? I'm a fan of that, by the way, but literally immediately following that, he goes back on his word by accepting her invite to share locations. It has him actually go off into the woods next to the house looking for her. Like, brother, you wouldn't even go upstairs with her? With a house full of people, but you'd go over there thinking she was there. Come on now, dog. Come on, dude. Come on now, dude.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
Ghostface surprises him and stabs his leg. He runs, well, stumble considering the hole in his leg, and hides on the other side of a shed. He then throws his phone away as to not show his location. As he takes off, Ghostface bursts out from the shed.
Run, bitch! Run!
Stabbing him like 4 times, leaving him to die as Sam and the home team arrive. Richie goes dad mode and shuts the party down, leaving only the core group to remain. That being Sam, Tara, Mindy, Liv, and Richie himself. After this, a phenomenal scene happens between Richie and Mindy as he asks her to go to the basement in order to get some beer. It even hits us with the famous "I'll be right back" staple. Later, we catch up to Sydney and Gail as they are driving to the location. When they realize exactly where they are in Stu Macher's house, the same one her father tried to kill Sydney. Mindy is still watching Stab, and it's at the scene where her uncle Randy was about to be attacked. In a unique different twist, we see Mindy reenacting her uncle by saying, "Look behind you." But this time, she actually does. And it pays off, and she's able to hold off Ghostface's attack long enough for Sam to cause them to run off. Every remaining character comes running into the scene. Amber accuses one of them to be the killer. Liv, having found Chad, has his blood on her hands, leading to her to become the prime suspect. Until she's not, as Amber shoots her in the head, ending the most boring character in the most boring way.
Welcome to Act 3.
Richie and Sam run off to the basement, leaving Tara alone with the killer. But as Richie puts it, there's always two killers. Brother never watched a Stab movie until recently, yet he acts like he knows the whole franchise already. That should have been a pretty big hint. Outside, Sydney and Gail arrive to the sounds of screaming. Amber runs outside pretending to need help, but they ain't buying this amateur act. So Amber says piss on it and shoots Gail in the gut. Sydney heads inside to try and finish it. She walks around the house shooting into every closed door she can find, and I mean every one of them. Meanwhile, Sam, who abandoned Richie, finds Tara tied up in a closet. We cut away from her while she's having a momentary bit of distrust in her sister, catching back up to Sydney as she heads upstairs. She gets a call from Ghostface while she continues shooting the doors, one of which had Richie hiding, so his leg took a bullet. Ghostface busts out and battles Sydney for the gun. They fall over the railing and fall to the floor below. Richie tries to get to the gun first, but Sam beats him to it. And Richie really wanted that gun, so he stabs her and takes it. Richie is the second killer. Holy crap. The love interest is the killer? That's gotta be new and a fresh take. While Amber brings in Gail, we hear the motive. Toxic fandom. Richie wants to make his own movie, in his eyes, a better sequel than Stab 8. Sydney takes a stab to the gut as she reaches for the knife, so thus begins the staging phase. Amber notices Tara is gone, as Sam did untie her. Tara begins fighting Amber while Sam and Richie also have a brief scuffle. Tara loses, but the same can't be said for Sydney and Gail, who put a beating on Amber as she walks into the kitchen. Like getting smashed over the head with a glass of hand sanitizer, for example. She does get a momentary glimpse of winning the showdown, but they knock her into the stove, which comes on. She tries one last attempt at persuading them, but Gail is not having it. She shoots her a few times as she then falls onto the open flame, catching on fire, seemingly dealt with. Sam also has that fight with Richie, and while it's not near as cool as Amber's fight, the ending of it was wild. She finds a hidden knife, thanks to her ghost dad. She stabs Richie through the cheek and out the other. She gets on top as she stabs him repeatedly. He asks what about his ending, and she hits bro with the "here it comes" and slashes his throat, ending him. She takes no chances, so she lights his body up with bullets. The day is set. Wait, here comes Amber, and she gets shot down from Tara the gunslinger. Now the day is saved. We see Mindy being wheeled out, surviving alongside her brother Chad. Before we wrap up, Sam thanks Sydney and Gail for their help. Luckily, Gail said she doesn't plan on writing a book about these events, and maybe instead about a brave and heroic former sheriff named Dwight Riley. The movie ends with the sisters heading to the hospital, as the camera pans out from the very house that started it all, the sun beginning to rise over the California hills. Scream 5 was and is a fun sequel that relies on bridging the gap between the older generations and the new. The movie is dedicated to Wes, which is amazing, as it was his vision, along with Kevin Williamson, that brought to life the franchise that we all so love to this day. I have said it before, and I'll say it again. The Scream franchise has no bad entries. Unlike others, Scream has consistently, at least, put out good, fun movies. I would have to rank Scream 5 a 7 out of 10. Some of the characters were a bit dull, and some just weren't really involved. This was mainly due to so many deleted scenes. Scenes that enhance the characters and their relationships with the overarching story. It's a fun ride with some fresh takes, but it does splinter with how much it does rely on the original specifically. Namely the killer being Richie, the love interest again. The motive was a different take, however, so I did enjoy that.
Richie!
I'm going to punish you.
For those that know, a year ago I dropped a Who Killed Who in Scream 6, and the scene with Paul 2.0 and Annika, I believe I now know who killed those characters. And stay to the end and I will explain who was under the mask during that scene. But finally, let's just get right on into this thing. The movie opens up to a lady answering a call, but it's not Ghostface, it's a customer calling the bar that film professor Laura Crane is at waiting for her date. Her date Reggie is apparently the worst with directions as they can't seem to find the spot.
Am I on Hudson?
I don't know.
I am not on Hudson.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
He has Laura go outside in hopes of helping him find the right bar. Eventually, he even has her go down a dark, creepy alleyway, which for some reason she does. The scene climaxes as Ghostface pops out, stabbing her over and over again, ending her. Title card. Wait, we are still watching Ghostface? And we see him take his mask off? It's Jason Carvey. He packs up his mask and walks back to his apartment, but not before running into Tara, who he is friends with. I wonder why. Especially when he asks if Sam is going to be at the big frat party. It's obvious he just wants to take both of them out. Come on now.
Hey, bro, come on now, dawg.
As he gets back, he calls out to Greg Bruckner, his partner in crime. After some time, he gets a call from someone using the Ghostface voice modulator. Believing it to be Greg, he talks about the kill, calling her just a piece of meat, an animal. Ghostface, not a fan of this, decides to mess with him by forcing him to play a game of hot or cold, or, as this movie likes to call it, warm or colder.
Let's play a game. Do you know warm or colder?
What the hell are you talking about?
It culminates on him being hottest at the fridge. As he opens it, we see Greg chopped up in the fridge, and we see a Ghostface stabbing Jason in the back. He turns and falls, and as he gets stabbed numerous times, declaring, "What about the movie?" As he wanted to finish Richie's movie. But Ghostface hits him with the classic, "Who gives a fuck about the movies?" and slashes us into the actual title card. Honestly, this opening scene was one of the best of the franchise. Seeing the follow-up after a Ghostface kill was amazing, and don't even get me started on the Ghostface on Ghostface action. We catch up with Sam as she wraps up another one of her therapy sessions with Dr. Christopher Stone. She arrives home shortly after, but also doesn't stay there very long as she learns from their roommate Quinn that Tara is at that frat party. Tara is at the party, but so is Chad and Mindy Meeks, along with Annika, Mindy's love interest, and Ethan, Chad's roommate. Some creeper named Frankie tries to take a wasted Tara upstairs, but never fear, our boy Chad is on the case. As they have a good old macho shoving match, Sam walks in tasing his gonads. Everyone on the home team leaves the party, but not without it being extremely awkward for everyone, as Sam and Tara have a big ol' argument, ending in some rude person tossing their drink on them. Like, who does that, dude? But before we swap scenes, Tara mentions that Sam has to let her go. And this is an obvious foreshadowing event, that's why I have to mention it. Tara gets to her room and talks to Quinn about her dad. She says after they lost their brother, her dad wouldn't leave her alone. But their conversation ends to allow another to begin. Chad and Tara have a deep bonding moment, one that has them about to kiss, at least until Quinn interrupts them looking for her phone. Chad begins to leave as we then swap over to Sam, who actually is dating the dude from across the way. Secretly, but not actually. Chad calls for Sam to come check something out. They learn of the deaths so far on the news and debate on leaving. Quinn calls her police dad to get some info, and we see he found Sam's ID at the crime scene. Sam and Tara head out, but shortly after, she receives a phone call. From Richie? It's Ghostface calling and explaining that they actually took Greg and Jason out for them, but proceeds to attack him anyways. Tara is able to throw them off, and then they run to a bodega where they yell to call the police, but then they enter. Ghostface takes out two of the store's customers, and then Neo's his way out of getting blasted by a shotgun from the owner of the store. He loops around, stabbing the man, and then taking his shotgun, and then Bro shows him how to hit your target as he blasts the man's face off. He shoots around the store as they look for Sam and Tara. Eventually, they spot them crawling down an aisle, but before they can actually do anything about it, they push over the shelves onto Ghostface, and then they run out the front door as cops arrive on the scene. Liking this idea, Ghostface does the same thing by going out the back, but not before leaving a mask as evidence. Sitting down with Quinn's dad, Detective Wayne Bailey, as he shows off that said mask. DNA says the mask belonged to one Richie Kirsch. For some reason, it seems as though Bailey had some trouble saying that name.
DNA says that it belonged to someone named Richie Kirsch. Does that ring a bell?
That's suspicious.
Sam and Tara explain the events of the previous film. Here is where Bailey learns of Sam's therapist. This scene really gives out hella clues. Like, after rewatching this film, it really does give off, hey, look over here, this is suspicious activity. Especially when we cut to another scene soon, but before that, Kirby. No, not the pink one, Kirby Reed. She's back as an FBI agent arriving to help solve the case. I'm not a huge fan of this character change, but while I agree she would have grown as a person and changed due to the events of Scream 4, I just miss her horror-loving side. Like, why can't we have both? At least we can have our gal getting punched. Oh, she dodged it. Oh shit, okay, Tara got her lick in. I love Gail, but this movie has me kind of disliking her a little bit. She will always hold a special place in my heart, so don't get that twisted. But after Scream 5, she literally said she wouldn't write a book on those killers. But nope, she went back on her word and wrote the book. Where's the Dewdrop book, Gail? Where's my book about Dewdrop, dude? She went back on her promises and reverted to old Gail instead of progressing as a character. So I'm not happy with her right now. Remember that certain scene I mentioned? It's here. Dr. Stone is enjoying some cereal, I think. Maybe got that Fruity Pebble action going. But he's watching a classic movie, the 1956 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where we see it's at the scene where the character says, it's too late, they are already here, you're next. All that fun stuff, which is ironic as he gets a knock at the door. It's Ghostface. They bust open the glass window and shank him in the nose, ending him, with the scene ending as they grab Sam's file from his archives. Almost like someone was recently tipped off that Sam was going to see that said therapist. Mindy hits us with a rules scene, once again as she is the living embodiment of our new Randy character. They discuss how the previous events were a requel, but that's not it anymore. They are in a franchise. The rules of a franchise, as laid out by Mindy, are 1. Everything is bigger than last time. 2. Whatever happened last time, expect the opposite. 3. No one is safe, legacy characters included. 4. Main characters are expendable to boost the IP. Once again, thank you Mindy for the rules. Ethan follows this up with the most hard-hitting question, one that is just truly earth-shattering. The laws of physics have yet to catch up. He asks, am I going to die a virgin? Way to stay involved, Ethan. Mindy puts Ethan, Quinn, and even Annika on her suspect list. Because again, never trust the love interest. But as the newbies inform them, if they are suspects, then shit dude, we're all suspects. I'm a suspect, Shay Rance is definitely a suspect, like definitely. You at home watching this video, you're a suspect.
Everybody's a suspect!
Kirby and Bailey discuss the case. Roman Bridger's mask was left at Dr. Stone's crime scene. The killer is counting down, but so what? We have Amber and Richie's mask at the scene of Jason and Greg, Jill and Charlie's at the bodega, and now Roman's at Stone's. The remaining masks yet to be found belong to Mickey Altieri, Nancy Loomis, Stu Monker, and Billy Loomis. Will those also turn up? As Kirby leaves, Bailey has a fellow detective dig into Kirby's past. During a nice little emotional dinner scene between the core four, we see Danny ironing some clothes as he sees Ghostface creeping over Quinn. He tries his best to get Sam's attention, but he has to settle by airdropping them all a picture of Ghostface taking out Quinn. They finally realize what's happening as Quinn gets tossed through the door. Chad and Tara, being the smart ones, run out through the door. Why the others didn't? Well, I don't know, dog. They dipped the hell out, and can you blame them? Exactly. Annika gets picked up by Ghostface and pushed against the wall as they stab her in the gut, twisting the knife and carving upwards until Sam is able to hit them with a knife block. Why the knife block and not a knife? Because someone took their knives, but that would mean someone in their immediate group is to blame. But who? After seeing Paul 2.0's body, they manage to barricade themselves in Quinn's room. With nowhere else to go, they are forced to cross a ladder bridging the gap between the two apartments. Sam makes the cross, then Mindy, leaving Annika as the last one across. As she does, Ghostface makes it into the room. They grab the ladder and hit that Taylor Swift song and start to shake it off. And by shake it off, I mean shake Annika off, forcing her to land to the ground below, ending her. Mindy's suspect list loses 2 suspects as Annika and Quinn are seemingly ended, leaving Ethan as her top suspect. He claims he had econ, but later I'll explain something about that, so stay tuned. Gale and Kirby show up in order to take the team over to an abandoned movie theater. But as Gale says, it's not just a theater, it's a shrine. In probably the coolest scene of the movie, downtime-wise, we see artifacts from every movie. Randy's shirt, the knife that stabbed Kirby, Dewey's badge, and the TV that fell on Stu, with even much more hidden around the room. Sam sees the shrine for her dad, causing her to have her first vision of Ghost Dad in the film, but never feared, Tara breaks her out of it. It's here where everyone separates to have their own conversation, but the only one I care to mention here is the one with Kirby and Mindy, as they have the horror movie buff face-off, both having some decent opinions on other franchises. They come up with a plan to catch Ghostface by having Sam and Tara walk around in a park, hoping the killer calls. But, and this is important, they leave Gale out of it. Why Gale didn't just show up anyways is beyond me, because normally she just does her own thing. But anyways, Sam does get the call and Kirby begins tracking it. Brother, Ghostface in this movie is so corny because of one line, and this one line alone. Sam tells them that they will die, and Ghostface actually hits them with the middle school trademark and goes, "No, you're going to die." I laugh at that bad dialogue every time. The call finishes getting traced, which is when we learn the call is coming from Gale's apartment. Ruh-roh Raggy. Gale's new boyfriend answers the phone but hands it over to Gale as they say it's the killer. Ghostface tells Gale about how legacy characters are expendable now, which only the core group was informed of, so yeah. As Ghostface talks to Gale, they also grab her boyfriend, only to toss bro through some shelves. In a sick scene, Ghostface wipes the blade clean, steps over the shelves, and then lunges at Gale. A chase through the apartment ensues, eventually ending in a room where Gale is able to retrieve a gun. She shoots the door a few times and proceeds to get another call from the killer. Gale searches for the killer as Ghostface mentions a fan favorite long-running theory of what if Gale could have become a killer. Being a smart cookie, she puts dude on hold and dials the number back. Hearing the phone ring, she shoots the closet. Luckily for her, it sounds like she shot them twice. Unluckily for her, she didn't. Ghostface pops out stabbing her, but Gale managed to knock them out luckily. So she grabs the knife in order to finish them off, but unluckily for her, she didn't knock them out. She gets stabbed with a piece of glass, but actually luckily for her, Sam and Tara arrive and scare off the would-be killer. Gale low-key seemingly dies here, her eyes closing as the scene changes. As the team regroups, they discuss what to do. Sam offers up herself in order to keep the others safe, but they won't allow it. They are the core four, my boy.
We are the core fucking four.
Thank you very much.
They come up with a plan to trap the killer in that theater and execute them. So they head out. One of my favorite scenes is up next, the subway scene. They intentionally go this route as more people, less chances of getting stabbed. That logic should hold up, right? Right? During this entire sequence, we see strangers dressed in Halloween attire. And some, I mean that literally. We see tons of masks and characters with callouts to tons of other franchises, and it's so fun seeing that they're all canon films in this world. As they board the train, Mindy and Ethan get separated from the group because of the massive crowd of people, forcing the two to have to catch the next train. Chad looks up from his phone and realizes the train has countless people wearing the Ghostface mask. Their plan of being surrounded by people backfires as the killer wearing the mask is nothing out of the ordinary since it is Halloween. Ethan is staring down Mindy as she texts the group chat calling him Ghostface.
Wow, man. Damn.
Mindy then spots someone dressed as Ghostface. Their eyes lock as moments of darkness allows them to slip closer and closer until they are gone. But then Ghostface grabs her mouth and stabs her deep in the gut twice, leaving her to bleed out on a train full of unaware people. Ethan finds her and calls for help. A nice, funny little joke happens next as she mentions how she got it wrong again and fuck this franchise. Just before arriving, Sam kicks Danny from the group since she can't fully trust them. Good move, Sam. Kirby, Sam, Tara, and Chad relax and wait for their target to arrive. Sam goes off on her own and grabs her dad's knife from the original events, which is when she gets a call from Bailey saying Kirby is the killer as she's no longer with the FBI. The power shuts off and a whole movie begins to play. It's someone recreating the Casey Becker kill. But it's actually just a fan film, like, actually, not a bad movie, it's just a fan film. Catching up with Tara and Chad as they finally just kiss. What a sweet oh shit, Tara gets stabbed and the killer targets Chad. But being a Chad, he lays the hammer down and in his own words introduces dude to Hobbs and Shaw.
Probably time to introduce him to Hobbs and Shaw.
They meet up with Sam and take off running, looking for an escape. But then Ghostface drops from the stage, attacking once again. Chad tackles them to the ground and hits them with Kenny's camera and then runs to catch up with the others. But Ghostface is still in hot pursuit. They end up in the lobby area once again. Everyone starts getting their licks in on Ghostface.
Another one. Another one. Another one.
Chad lifts a gumball dispenser overhead to finish this. But Ghostface decides to cheat though, and they reproduce via mitosis and have their clone stab Chad in the side, forcing him to the ground. Chad is 100% killed off during the tag team Hell in a Cell match as the two Ghostfaces honestly stab him like 20 times. There's no way he makes it out of this one.
There's no way out of this one. You're done.
Tara is none too happy seeing him die off because he did die off from all of those stabs, but Sam is able to drag her away. Yet again, they run into a Ghostface. What, is there like 50 of them at this point? Kirby shows up shooting, all bloody, but so does Bailey. Who's the killer? Bailey shoots down Kirby as the two Ghostfaces join his side. Okay, so 50 was a little much. 3 is a little more accurate. But we have arrived to the reveal. Spoiler alert, I don't care for this part, so yeah. Ghostface 1, Ethan, cause obvious. Ghostface 2, Mindy? No, Quinn, the girl that died halfway through the movie. They have been counting down to make Sam look like the mastermind to ruin her before killing her. The family turned Ghostface killers are related to Richie, so yeah, another revenge motive. Sam starts roasting Richie to his dad.
He was a limp dick little fuck who cried before I slit his throat.
Causing Quinn to charge her, but she should know you should never be Ghostface on an empty stomach because she tried to eat the brick in Tara's hand. Kirby shoots Bailey, getting her get back, only to get tackled and stabbed by Ethan. Sam and Tara find themselves on the upper part of the auditorium. Bailey, who is fine since he was wearing a bulletproof vest, shoots at Tara, causing her to slip, but Sam catches her. Ethan is just below her, and Quinn has arrived to the top. Harkening back to earlier, Tara tells Sam to let her go. As I told you, it was a major foreshadowing event.
Dude, stop, let me go.
So she does. Tara takes a stab for a stab. Her in the gut, and Ethan in the damn mouth, dude.
Wow, man. Damn.
He is seemingly dealt with, but Quinn for sure is, as she takes one to the dome beast in front of her dad, which is followed up by the probably worst sequence. They just run at each other and fall over the ledge. Mind you, Bailey had a gun aimed at her, but nah, he ran at her because, yeah. Sam becomes the Ghostface and taunts Bailey before she then lights him up with stabs all over his body. She only stops when seeing Tara. She says she is not a murderer, but then proceeds to murder him by stabbing him in the eye. The day is seemingly saved as they sit on the stage and rest, thinking of the events that just unfolded. Wait, Ethan pops out charging them, until Kirby pushes the TV onto his head, killing him. Now it's saved. Danny opens the door, bringing the cavalry with him. They embrace, as this movie allowed the love interest to actually be good for a change, because Scream 2 did it. He informs us that both Mindy and Gail are good. As they talk to Kirby, we hear, "Got one more here," but who could that be? Surely not Chat, and it's Chad. The movie ends with Sam dropping her dad's mask and walking off with Tara, leaving that side of her behind and moving forward with the New York backdrop looming overhead. Scream 6 is another fun and action-packed entry in the long-running franchise, and while it has some of my favorite scenes, it also has some of the worst. Let's start with the good. The opening scene. That one was bonkers. It was a great change to our typical opening kill, as it involved a Ghostface getting killed. Seeing Ghostface just linger after the kill also was wild. The bedroom scene. Other than Quinn, I really enjoyed this scene. And as promised, the killer behind the mask in this scene was Ethan. It obviously wasn't Quinn, for obvious reasons, and Ethan is the more sinister of the two male killers. He enjoyed the kill more. Bailey mainly wanted to kill the survivors from the previous movie and people who just kinda got in the way, and Annika was not one of those people. The killer purposefully grabbed her and walked her to the wall, stabbed her, twisted the knife, and brought it up, all the while watching her eyes. Now, like in my old video, I agreed with many thinking that Ethan actually had a valid alibi. But who else do we know that faked an alibi before? By showing up so others could see them and then leaving to don the mask.
Hey, what are you saying? That I killed her? It would certainly improve your high school kill.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was.
So yeah, it was Ethan. Now the bad. Chad. I love Chad and the whole core 4, but brother should be chilling with my boy Dewey right now. He took stab after stab to the torso and he was just cool with it. He then was left to bleed out for like 30 minutes before the police arrived. Bro, just built different, I guess. Scream 6 is fun, but it lacks real stakes. Scream 5 upped the ante by killing off Dewey to show that they mean business. But 6? No one of true importance died. Core 4 survived, Gale survived, only the newbies died off. So they really backtracked from their stance they established in the previous film. And I also hated that ending, if you can't tell. The reveal was one of the weaker ones in the franchise. Scream 5 copied 1 by having the love interest be a killer, but at least the motive was fresh. Here is just a reprint of Scream 2. The family getting revenge for their loss at the hands of the final girl. Same motive, same killers. I will have to rank Scream 6 a 6 out of 10. It's really fun and has its moments, but the lack of any real danger and the ending reveal just brings it down some. It also suffers from the loss of the big 3, as we only had Gale in this one. But trust, it's still a great movie, as I fully believe that the Scream franchise has no bad entries. Now that I have talked about and reviewed each film individually, let's jump over and drop them onto a tier list to properly rank them. Time to put these things in a tier list, because now that I've reviewed them, I want to put them in a tier list so that way it is obviously shown which movies I like more than the others. But don't get me wrong, I have to preface this. I do not hate any of these movies. I don't believe this franchise has a single bad entry. But with that being said, let's jump on into the first one. The original, Scream. This is pretty obvious, at least for me. It's an easy S tier. That movie is so spectacular, and it started it all. It has one of the best opening kill scenes. It's a perfect movie. Like I said in my review earlier, it's my favorite horror movie of all time, so it's an easy S tier. And it holds up. Scream 2. This one is one of my favorite sequels to the franchise, so it's an easy A tier for me. It has a cool opening scene, while not my favorite, which is surprising because a lot of people love that opening scene, and I do enjoy it. It's just not my favorite. But the rest of the cast, phenomenal. Hallie, Sydney again, obviously, Randy for what he's in. Speaking of Randy, that's the one downside. Why did they have to take my boy Randy out, dude? It's just so sad to see. Scream 3. Alright, I know this is kind of like the black sheep of the franchise. Most people have it as their bottom movie. But to me, it's S tier. Nah, I'm just playing. It's C tier. It's not D tier because it's not a terrible movie. In fact, D tier, I don't know why it's there. Just pretend it's not there because no movie belongs in D tier on this franchise. But Scream 3 is one of the lower end for me, but I still really enjoy it. And as I have found out in my review, so do a lot of you. And that's amazing because this movie, over the years, from what I've seen, has received a lot of backlash and a lot of hate because it's just not seen as high as the other movies, which is a good thing in the long run because that just means all these movies in this franchise have set such a high bar that if it doesn't meet it, it just seems bad. But this is a fun movie and it's a good movie. Scream 4, another A tier. A little bit lower than Scream 2, but this is probably my next up favorite sequel. At first, it was a lot lower for me, but after rewatching it again and stuff, it brings back so much nostalgia. And it has some of the best of the core 3, that being Sydney, Gale, and Dewey. And it introduces some of my favorite characters in the franchise, that being Kirby Reed. And another thing I loved about Scream 4 was the Ghostface killers. Jill specifically, she killed it, and she kind of was the mastermind behind it. She wanted to be the new Sydney. Loved it. Cool motive, fresh motive. Loved it, dude. Awesome. Not so much for Charlie. Sorry, dog. Scream 5. The one that brought it back after another long hiatus. Scream 5 for me is a B tier. It's an average movie, but it's a great movie. It's really good. It was a little bit higher up my first time watching it because it gives off such an authentic Scream feel. But I think it gives off such an authentic Scream feel because it does take a lot from Scream 1 to make it its own thing. So it is great. And it did copy a lot, so it kind of brings it down a little bit. Luckily for them, they didn't copy as much as another entry, Scream 6. the most recent entry that came out last year. For me, I used to really love this movie, and I still really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. But it's my least favorite movie in the franchise so far. It has some of the best scenes. The latter scene, specifically with Annika, loved it. That was such a cool scene. Her death scene being that too was wild. And it's just, I hated it for my girl Mindy because I love Mindy. So that was sad. It was a good emotional scene. I liked it a lot. And then the opening kill scene, you already know I really like it. I mean, seeing Ghostface unmask himself in that scene was wild. I mean, it's never been done before. And I love fresh takes. And I love to try something new. That's what this franchise is all about. And then after that, it just goes back to copying. And the killer reveal is the same as Scream 2. And you could be saying, well, so was Scream 5. And you will be right, but Scream 6, it had the same killers and the same motive. So it just wasn't my thing. But with that being said, this is my ranking, man. Well, that's my official ranking of the Scream franchise. Can it change in the future? Yes, and it probably will, as the series isn't quite done pumping out some films, with the Scream 7's production dates quickly approaching. But with that being said, what is your official ranking of the Scream franchise? Let me know. If you stayed all the way until the end, you're a real one. I appreciate you and your time. Stay chill, and I will see you next time.